Little bit different than the June debate, right? Just a hair.
It is funny. I was talking with my wife. We were just thinking back. It was just about 2.5 months, 3 months ago, whatever it was, that Joe Biden was up there. And I thought about it when one of the candidates said something about Medicare, and it made me immediately think of when Joe Biden had the moment where he just froze up and said, we beat Medicare. So yeah, a little bit different tonight. So we got Ryan Kloss saying yo. We got Ryan Kloss also saying betting markets say Kamala won debate. It was a 3-on-1, talking about the moderators at ABC. Let me start here, though. I'm going to throw it to you. I want you to
Okay.
have the floor first, but
Okay.
I did want to show you this
Oh,
live.
is this so?
I did
I
not.
just want to be clear. I
Go
have
ahead.
not looked at anything. I have not looked at
Me
betting
either.
markets. I have not looked at X, other than I saw a few tweets or X right before I came on. But I'm going to guess Harris is now the favorite. She
Yes.
was the
So,
underdog when I looked earlier today.
yep. So I'm with you. I did not look at X, but I did look at the election betting odds throughout the debate. I thought it was kind of interesting to see the ebbs and the flows while, let's say, Trump was doing well and then Kamala was doing well and vice versa, and watching. So I'll show you live here. So look, this is let me just refresh so everybody knows it's up to date. 10:52 p.m. Eastern, so 2 minutes ago. So Kamala Harris is now the
Yep.
favorite, 51% to 47.4%. So we're basically looking at 3.5 points. I know it's hard to see that, but Eric, basically today, Harris jumped 4.1 percentage points. Trump dropped 3.6. So we're talking about dang near close to an 8-point swing, basically based on this debate. To me, that tells the story.
Look, partisans are going to spin this how they spin it, but if you're looking at this even remotely objectively, Kamala Harris won that debate. I think the only question is, was it a judge's scorecard like win, or did she knock him down several times to the point where it was a unanimous decision, maybe even a TKO. Early in the debate, I thought that was Trump's best moment. She looked to me a little nervous when she came
Mhm.
out, a
Yeah.
little stiff, a little rehearsed, didn't answer well at all. What is a pretty layup question to begin the debate is, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? She could have easily said, do you remember what 4 years ago was September of 2020? Do you remember that time? Unemployment was 10, 12%. Millions of people were out of work. Thousands of people were dying every day from a virus we had no cure for. And the president at that time was about to be fired because of his handling of that pandemic. Like, that was a layup, and she blew that. And I'll be honest, at that point, I thought Trump may win this debate. Like, I thought, I don't know. Like, she was okay. I mean, obviously, it was nowhere near a Biden situation, but I thought Trump early on had the better of some of the exchanges, but it was close. But then it turned. And in the last hour of the debate, I thought Harris dominated. I mean, especially when you got into foreign policy. And to me, Charlie, we can break down some of the answers. And the thing that really swung it, this is what I wrote down at the time when I thought it really turned,
Can I
is when,
guess?
yes, go ahead.
Can I guess? Well, first of all, I think it's clear. Trump was winning for about the first 20 minutes. I agree. Kamala's first answer was kind of that word salad that the right always says that Kamala comes out with. It absolutely turned on abortion. 20 minutes in, she took all the momentum with a great answer on abortion, and it seemed like that momentum carried for the next hour or so. And although Trump had some good moments and good lines, basically from the 20-minute mark on, Kamala Harris clearly won the debate.
It's interesting you say that because I have a different moment. I
Interesting.
agree with you on the abortion thing, but the moment I noted was when Harris talked about his rallies, which at the
Okay.
time I thought, what is she doing? Like at the time I thought, why is she just randomly bringing up his rallies and how bored people are and people are leaving? Like, I thought, what's going on here? But clearly what she was doing is she was laying a trap, and Trump took it, because from that moment, I think for the rest of the debate, his mood changed. and he became angry. Like you could see he was pissed, and that stayed with him pretty much the rest of the debate. And I don't think it benefited him. I think he came off as rambling, like at times kind of detached from reality. His January 6th stuff, the election denying, and and on foreign policy when they got into the Ukraine war. I mean, she really had some great lines. Putin would have you for lunch. They'll manipulate you with flattery and favor. She crushed him on the election denial stuff. January 6th, talking about that day. I was in the Capitol. We need to turn the page. You're right. I thought the abortion stuff was good for her. But I also thought that it was getting under Trump's skin. I think clearly laying a trap for him. I mean, why else would she bring up his rallies? I mean, that doesn't really matter in terms of who the next president's going to be. I think they planned that out. I think they thought, let's get under his skin and try to get him angry and agitated. And I think it worked.
So, and look, I actually look at these notes, baby. We got
Oh yeah. Oh
almost
yeah.
2
I
pages.
think you might have more than I do there.
So, was
Oh,
was
you might even
the
see that with a light.
was the rally, was that after abortion? Was that right after?
That was right after abortion.
Okay. Yeah. So, I think, look, early on, because Trump is good at these little one-liners. So, again, if we're just starting from the jump, first of all, I thought the handshake was nice. It was awkward. And Kamala Harris literally introduces herself, which is funny. I mean,
Yes.
the fact
Can
that
I
she was in the Senate the whole time that he was president and they'd never met, that's also
Yeah.
odd. I would think that every senator should have met the president for a second. But then, like,
Let me just
Trump.
can I make a
Go
point on
ahead.
the
Yeah.
handshake real quick?
Go
If
ahead.
you watch that, that was Harris going to Trump. I don't think Trump was
Yes.
going to shake her hand. She walked basically across the stage. And the thing I liked about that, I just think even if they hate each other, I think it's nice when they shake hands. Like, I don't know,
Yes.
maybe I'm old fashioned. Just shake hands. Let's try to restore some sense of our normalcy in our institutions, even in these crazy times. But that showed you what I think played out through the debate. She was the aggressor in this debate. And sometimes who wins a debate comes down to who is perceived to be as the aggressor,
Like
who is
boxing. Yeah.
throwing the punches. And I think, especially after, as we talked about, the first 15, 20 minutes when her footing was a little wobbly, I think once she got that footing down, I think she was clearly the aggressor of this debate. And you're right about the abortion answer. I thought Trump did okay on that at the beginning, but the mistake he made was was when he said that's what people wanted. And credit her for picking up on that line. And rather than going into a canned, rehearsed, okay, here's my abortion talking point, like she did earlier on the economy, she took that line Trump said and said, this is what women want. Women want to be in the car with their husband when they're miscarrying because they can't get an abortion. They want to have to take a pregnancy to term because they're a victim of incest. Like, that was really effective in that moment. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, I wrote that line down. She said, bleeding out in a car in a parking lot. That was a good line. If we go back early, so again, I did think Kamala's first answer was word salady. She seemed like she was nervous. She came back with a better second response. Trump had some good lines. Run, spot, run, if you remember. That was good. Like, your
Yes.
plan
Yeah,
is
that was good.
basically just the most basic kindergarten plan. Um, he also said, I'm going to send you a MAGA hat, basically saying you're stealing my policies.
Right.
And then, like I said, I think, and we're talking about the same time frame, about 20, 25 minutes in, abortion, then the rallies, everything turned right there. I thought Trump had a couple good lines about Biden, though, basically saying, he spends all his time on the beach, and you have to wake up your president at 4 p.m. to have him go sign a bill and all that. So, look, I can go line by line. I think we both agree. Look, if you think Donald Trump won this debate, you're insane. And you're just being partisan.
You really
Like,
are.
he lost. Here's the
He
deal, though.
lost.
And I haven't looked at X either, but the narrative is going to be, and I think there's a bit of fairness to this argument, but the narrative on the right is going to be that ABC News moderators were super biased. And I do think, now look, Trump got fact checked about 2 or 3 times. He got fact checked on the post-birth abortion. He got fact checked on the eating dogs. With if that was on your bingo card, by the way, to bring up the Haitian dog eaters, you knew
Which he
that was
said
gonna hit.
multiple times. He went
Right.
back to the eating of the dogs.
So, and you know what? I think there is a bit of an argument there to some of the questioning also. I feel like the questions did favor Kamala Harris a bit. Like there could have been a question that was about Kamala, why have you flip-flopped on a lot of positions? And I'm just trying to be fair here. I'm watching it with my wife. They fact-checked Trump more, but to be fair, Trump lied more. I think that's fair to say. But I do think the line of questioning did
Yeah.
benefit
Well, Charlie,
Kamala. What do you think?
they did ask her on the they did ask her the flip flop question. Yeah, well, I mean, they did ask her the flip. To be fair to them, they did
How'd they
ask her the
ask it?
flip flop question. They asked,
Was
in
it just
fact,
about
they asked.
fracking?
Well, they asked it first. It went twice. No, that was the funny thing is it wasn't actually about fracking, but she answered it with fracking, which I thought was
Okay.
interesting. They asked her about her position on, I think it was the border. I think it was border crossings being criminalized because in
Okay.
her earlier campaign she had said it shouldn't be criminalized. And then they asked her in the same question. It was Lindsey Davis, one other thing, and she took the question and turned it right away to fracking, which they didn't even ask her about. And then they asked her later about her flip-flopping on Medicare for all during the healthcare section, which was near the end of the debate. Look, I said this for the Biden debate back when we thought the Biden debate was maybe going to be normal. I remember you and I did a preview show. And I said then, I said, this is how you can tell if Trump won or lost the debate. If right-wing X and the right-wing media complex is talking more about, at that time, the CNN moderators than they are about the debate, that means Trump lost. If they're not talking about the moderators, that means Trump won. Well, of course, what happened? Nobody talked about the moderators. In fact, Trump said the CNN moderators were great, right? But here, I think you're right. I think the narrative on the right, I haven't really gone in the check yet, but it's going to be David Muir and Lindsey Davis and the ABC people were over the top. Now, what I would say to that is it's tough because as Trump is a unique political animal in many, many ways. One of the ways is all politicians lie or exaggerate or misconstrue their opponent's arguments, right? That happens all the time and in every debate. But Trump takes it to such an extreme on sometimes such blatantly obvious things that I feel like there are times if you don't fact check it, you look bad. But then if you do fact check it, you also look bad because people point out, well, it was fact checked and the other candidate wasn't fact checked. So I think that is something that the Trump people are going to point to. I think that shows that they're losing.
Sure.
Do I think, and I thought the ABC moderators did a pretty good job. I thought they asked some tough questions on both sides. Will I say that if I had to, like, gun to my head, I think they were a little bit harder on Trump. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think it is fair to say they were a little bit harder on Trump. I do not think that is why he lost that debate by any means. And I do think it's worth pointing out Trump. Here's the thing that Trump people do is they say, you have to treat us like we're normal, right? You have to treat us like every other politician. But he's not. He's just not. Like, he's objectively not like any other because let's start with the basic thing. No other politician has ever tried to overturn the results of an election and continued to lie about it year after year after year to undermine our democracy. So he's not a normal politician. So the media not treating him like one. How do you do that? When you're in the media, I think it's a great media debate. How do you deal with Trump? How do you debate him if you're the opposing candidate? Because he is not a normal politician. Like, when the fact checks come out, Harris said some things, and I wrote them down, that are not true or misleading. She had several and I think it's fair to point those out. She said that Trump wants to do away with IVF. That's not true. Trump has been supportive of IVF. She said that the Charlottesville thing, which Biden always brought up as well, if you read the full quote of what Trump said on Charlottesville, it is much less damning than the quote they always go to of good people on both sides. He
Yes.
provided more context of what he was talking about. And if so, Trump is mostly right on that. So Harris said some things that weren't true. But when the fact checks come out, it's going to be 3-1, 4-1, 5-1 in terms of the lies and mischaracterizations, Trump versus Harris. So let's say you have two candidates and one of them is lying or manipulating or distorting the record 5 times as much as the other one. Are you as a moderator supposed to treat that equally? Is that your job? I mean, I'm asking, like, I'm not saying, I'm honestly asking. That's not a, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be, I'm really asking the question. What do you do in that scenario? Like when you have a candidate for president who tried to overturn an election and is on stage talking about how 3 years later how he really won that election, how January 6th was not a big deal, how he bears no responsibility for that. Like as a moderator, what are you supposed to do with that? Do you just treat that like two candidates sparring over healthcare? I mean, I'm seriously, for the Trump people, I'm asking you, what do you do with that? We've never been in that position before.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's funny because so the fact checking and the flip flopping on Kamala Harris, she must have handled it dang well because I watched that whole freaking thing with my notebook, and she was able to spin that one pretty well. Where I feel like Trump could have pressed her on that, and so I agree with you. Trump's lies, mistruths, whatever you want to call them, they're much more egregious. But the two that I wrote down, you brought up one of them, where I do think so. The whole thing about fine people on both sides that has been totally debunked a, a long time ago, right? That they totally took that quote out of context. The other one is the bloodbath quote, where
Yes.
Trump
Yep.
was talking about what energy was he talking? Or
No,
the
he
car
was talking
industry,
about the auto industry. Yes, he
the
said it
auto
would be a
industry,
bloodbath for the he meant for the auto industry if
right?
Trump and Harris if
And
Harris
let's be
wins.
real. At this point, because that has been such a big storyline, especially on the right, and folks debunking that, Kamala Harris knows what he actually said. So, by the way, I'm only bringing this up because, look, to me, Kamala Harris clearly won, and she didn't win just because of the moderators. She won. It wasn't a split decision. Again, I agree with you. I think the moderators were slightly biased towards Kamala Harris. I'm just trying to bring up a couple points. I think they could have fact checked her on the bloodbath and on the fine people on both sides. I think that was fair because I just don't remember a lot of fact checks to her. But then again, the things Trump says are so crazy. The dogs and the
Right.
cats being eaten. Here's
That is
another good one. The post-birth abortion thing, which I've heard so many times. I finally had to look it up. I'm watching that debate. I'm like, well, what is this? And it's that governor, Ralph Northam,
yeah,
and
the
he
one
was
who who wore blackface, right?
blackface. So if you can look this up, folks, don't take my word for it because I'm just like you. I heard this so many times that people are allowing post-birth
Yeah.
abortions. I'm like, I have to look this up. It was like a hypothetical question he was asked.
Yes.
If a woman was in labor and had a fetus with a bunch of abnormalities, right, and deformities, it was the craziest question. It was a hypothetical. So
Yeah.
also that's been taken totally out of context to act like Democrats want babies after their birth to be murdered, which is
It's
absurd.
crazy. The fact check that they said is it's illegal to kill a baby after they're born anywhere in the country, which is
Right.
true. What Northam I think was talking about, and what does happen sometimes, is a baby is born who has very little time to live. And in that situation, the parents and the doctor decide because they have a genetic defect, they have a terrible disease. In that horrible situation, the parents and the doctor decide, okay, do we try to do everything we can to keep this baby alive? Or do we just let the baby pass? Nobody's killing the baby, right? So when Trump says that, it is completely crazy and ridiculous. But he says it all the time like it's just totally true. He said he had nothing to do with January 6th. He summoned the people there. They were there because of him. They went to the Capitol because of him. They tried to overturn stop the peaceful transfer of power because of him. He says that the election was fraudulent. I mean, we all know that. There's no need to get into that. He says crime is up in America. crime is down, and then he says the numbers are a lie. They're not a lie. It's the FBI statistics from last year. It's the biggest one-year drop in homicides we've ever seen. The numbers are preliminary. They can change over time, but the numbers as of now that we have on record, that's what they say. And by the way, if you look at most big cities in the first 8 months of this year, most big cities, the murder rate is down even from the lower numbers of last year, down even further. He talks about immigrants they're emptying their insane asylums and prisons. There's no fact. Like CNN reached out to the campaign and they said, Trump says this over and over again. Send us proof of where are these insane asylums being emptied. The Trump campaign didn't respond. Of course they didn't, because it's not happening. There's just so many things. The trade deficit with China, that's another thing. It was actually higher under Trump than it was under Biden. The jobs that returned from after the pandemic were all jobs that were lost by the pandemic. That's not true. A lot of them were, like 9 million of them were. That part is right. But then there were another like 10 or 12 million that the Biden administration added on top of that. So it's the volume of the lies with Trump. It's how over the top they are, eating the dogs. So again, I'm honestly asking the question, put yourself in the shoes of the moderators, because essentially what you're saying, if you don't fact check some of this stuff, is a moderator of a debate should never fact check anything. That's essentially would be your argument, right? Because if you can't fact check that the last election was not stolen, then I don't know what you can fact check, right? And so I just think that a moderator does have some responsibility to keep the train somewhat on the rails. Oh, I'm getting breaking news here, Charlie, from my lovely wife. This is big. This is huge.
What do we have?
Taylor Swift has endorsed Kamala Harris. Taylor Swift.
Tonight?
I'm being told this is official. Let me see. So you want to say something that will move the betting odds. This is from the Instagram account of Taylor Swift. Like many of you, I watched the debate tonight. If you haven't already, now is a great time to do your research on the issues at hand and the stances these candidates take on the topics that matter to you the most. As a voter, I make sure to watch and read everything I can about their proposed policies. I'll be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I've done my research. I've made my choice. There you go.
How about that?
Something that'll move the betting odds.
Let me check right now.
I'm only slightly joking.
Okay, but you were being serious, right? That was a real Instagram post, correct?
Oh, and at the end, my wife just pointed this out. She ends it with love and hope. Taylor Swift, childless cat lady.
Wow.
And she's holding a cat. She's holding a cat in the Instagram photo.
I love it. This is not that relevant, but I just want to say, because you brought it up. Now, I laugh when Trump says, they're emptying their prisons and their insane asylums. But let's be real. If you were one of these third world countries, that's what you would do. And I only bring this up because you probably know about the Mariel boat lift, right? Are you familiar with that? Back in the day in Miami from Cuba, Haiti. So basically, that's pretty much what happened. And I'm reading it here. There was a lot of hardened criminals that came over to the Miami area. I think it's something like 2,700, 1,300. So again, Trump lies, he exaggerates, but I also wouldn't put it past some of these countries to kind of say, hey, our prisons are filling up and maybe let's kind of let them go near the border. I only bring that up as a half joke, but for people, look up the Mariel boat lift. By the way, that's basically, if I'm not mistaken, somebody fact check me. I think that's in the movie Scarface. I think that's how Scarface came to the United States in the movie. Somebody please fact check me on that. I think I'm right.
And look, to be clear, a lot of people have come across the border. It's been way too wide open. And some of those people are criminals and some of them have committed crime. Like, that is a totally fair point. And I actually thought Trump's strongest parts of the night were often his immigration attacks, which are probably his best issue. And one of the reasons it works so well for him is because Biden and Harris don't really have a good answer for it, because there isn't a good answer. For 3 years, the border was way too open and too many people came across. But Venezuela is a good example. There are a lot of Venezuelans in America, right? Some of them are criminals. I don't know if Venezuela's been going through a lot, right, in their country. They have a terrible, brutal government. They just had an election where Maduro lost, but he refuses to leave. They've lost 7 million people from their country in the last 10 years, a country that only had 28 million people. They've lost a quarter of their population that has left that country because of how terrible it is. Now, most of those people didn't come to America. Most of them went to Colombia or other countries in the region, but a large number of them did come to America. And it's totally fair to say some of those people are criminals, right? We know there are Venezuelans right now. It was just on the news the other day, Venezuelan gangs that are in some areas. But it is also worth pointing out that, again, even with that, crime in America down, and now at lower levels, at least in murder rates, than they were when Donald Trump was president, which is, again, another reason why Kamala Harris whiffed so bad on that opening question. Like, are you better off than you are 4 years ago? You could have nailed that question if you're Harris. And then she went right to the pivot of, here's what I would do. Here are some of my economic policies. That's fine. But she missed an easy layup before that.
Eric, by the way, my guy Daddy Padre, what is Chuck drinking? This is just water infused with some mango caffeine drink. It's very good. I'll explain later.
Chuck, do we have any good comment? I can't see. I only see the comments when they pop up. If you want to throw any in, or there's any questions, feel free to do so.
I will. A lot of people are just saying, whether they think Trump won or Harris won. No, you said this perfectly. It is funny how. So we're sitting on the couch. There's no pressure. But the first question that Kamala slipped up on, it was the easiest layup. And this is what, when everybody goes, were you better off 4 years ago? That's a stupid question because it was freaking COVID. Why don't you say, were you better off 5 years ago? Like, it's the most obvious question when you've asked this in 2020. No one was better off when not everybody. A lot of people were dying. Nobody could go to a sporting event. People's businesses were shut down. Schools were closed. People were losing their jobs. Everybody was depressed. It's the easiest answer in the world to just say, of course not. We were in the middle of COVID. And the fact that she slipped up on that one was very bad, but then was able to, I think she was nervous, honestly.
I think she was too.
Because I guess I missed a couple things, but I wrote down after run spot run, which was a good line from Trump. I wrote down, just Kamala isn't a smooth speaker. And I know, look, not everybody can be Barack Obama, but her first 2-3 exchanges were not good. I'm telling you, man, as you said, between abortion and maybe goading him to get into the rallies, it's hilarious that you can still get Trump with the rallies, that he's like an 80-year-old dude. It's such a dick measuring contest, the fact that you can get to him on that. But she found her groove after that, man. And again, she's not Barack Obama, but like you mentioned the boxing standpoint, ring generalmanship, like she controlled the debate from the 20-minute mark on. Trump had a couple good lines here and there, but she basically controlled it for the last hour and 15, however long it was.
She did. And look, early on, I think it looked like she was falling back on her rehearsed lines. Like when that question came up, it was clear to me she was going to talk about her economic proposals in that first question, no matter what it was. And she just kind of blew right by it. But then when she kind of got comfortable and got away from some of those pre-canned lines, she really came alive. And like I said, I mean, in the foreign policy stuff and the January 6th election denial stuff, and it's not just because I tend to agree with her on that stuff, although I do, but she just nailed him, like with great lines, talking about how it's time to turn the page. Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people when he talked about, getting more votes than Joe Biden did. The flattery and favor line, she like looked right at him. They know you, talking about Putin. They know they can manipulate you with favory and flatter. And I thought Trump, look, I've said this before about Trump. He has a lot of skill as a politician, and clearly with understanding and tapping into his base, the white working class mainly. I'm not saying that's his entire base. That's the main part of it. He understands them at a gut level, and he has a feel and an instinct. And so I want to give him credit for his political abilities. He instinctively understands the abortion isn't good for him. And so he's pivoted and he's changed the Republican Party and pulled them to the center on that. But the one thing that if you were saying to me, what could Donald Trump have done over the last, I don't know, 9 years since he came down that escalator that would have put him in a better position to win this election? Is he, would it be too much to ask him to learn some policy? Like this man, I don't know if you saw the Economic Forum of New York when he was there last week. He gave an economic speech and they asked him a question about childcare and what policies the government could enact, which I don't think that was brought up in the debate tonight, by the way, which is kind of a sleeper issue in the country. And he rambled on for 3 minutes incoherently about it. And I just think that, how does he not have answers for some of those things? Like, can you tell me one, other than talking about imposing tariffs, although he didn't say, by the way, what the tariff level would be. He's never specific about that. Did you ever notice? Like I want tariffs. It'll bring in a lot of revenue because he knows if the tariffs are high enough, it's going to be a major increase in prices to the average American. But what specific policy did Donald Trump lay out tonight? Like for Harris, I can rattle off several: the child tax credit, the money for first-time home buyers, the small business incentives that she wants to add, the building of grants to help build new homes. Like there's a list. It's not a huge list. She didn't do a ton of policy either. But what policies did Trump lay out and articulate clearly?
Well, I'll say this. First of all, I think Kamala, at least 2 times I remember, she made a point to say, "You're running against me, not Joe Biden," when Donald Trump went after some of the Biden policies, which I think is smart. If you're Kamala Harris, you try to attach yourself, obviously, to Biden on anything good. You try to separate yourself on anything that's poor. Now, here's what I'll say. In terms of Trump policy, here's where, look, I think most people, when I say most, I'm talking about across partisan lines. I think a lot of people would say Republicans and Trump are better on immigration, for example. I think a lot of people would say Republicans and Trump are better on foreign policy. At least things were quieter when Trump was president. And so I bring that up because here are 2 points where Donald Trump should be able to control that narrative and should be able to take it to Kamala Harris. I can't remember any good lines tonight from Trump in regards to immigration. And then the foreign policy thing, I actually think Kamala Harris spun that in a way where, to me, it looked like Kamala Harris won the foreign policy debate, which she and Biden probably shouldn't win that. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, if you want to get into the details of why there's a war going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Israel, again, I think if we're talking big picture, it's fair to say that the world was quieter under Trump. He should be able to win that section of the debate. And I feel like Kamala Harris actually won the foreign policy portion. So,
Oh, she won it
and
by
I
a
don't think it was
mile.
close.
No, it wasn't close. And a lot of that is because, again, Trump's lack of specifics. Like he couldn't give anything about, he couldn't. And here's, it's not just lack of specific, it's a lack of like moral clarity at a basic level. Like we can agree or disagree about tactics, about funding certain things for Ukraine. But when they asked him, do you want, and I'm paraphrasing here, but something effective, do you want Ukraine to win the war?
And he
Like,
wouldn't answer.
and he wouldn't answer that. Like, this
Yeah.
is a democracy, an ally of the United States, a country that wants to be in NATO, that was invaded by a brutal dictator who's trying to do a land grab in Europe, one of the first times since World War II. And obviously, he doesn't necessarily just want to stop at Ukraine. And he wouldn't even answer that. And that undermines his position, because you could imagine Trump being like, of course I want Ukraine to win. Of course I think this war was unjust. However, I also think that we're spending a lot of money, that we have to try to draw this war to a close. Here is my plan to end the war. That would have been a good answer. Instead, he wouldn't answer if he thought he wanted Ukraine to win. And then he wouldn't give us any plan. It's just, well, I'll magically solve it before I'm sworn in. Same thing with the Middle East. And it gets back to my point about his lack of specificity for being at this game so long. I mean, he's either been the president or has been running for president for 9 years, for a decade, basically. And it's all surface level. There isn't any meat on the bone in the vast majority of policy areas, even on immigration, which should be his bread and butter, which is, probably his best issue. He didn't have a good answer for how he would do this mass deportation. I mean, if you want to deport 11 million people or whatever the number is, Trump says it's 20 plus. How is that going to work? I mean, how are you going to be pulling grandmothers out of their homes? He says he's going to use local police, but he doesn't really talk about the details. And he didn't really have a good on immigration. Harris and Biden don't have a particularly strong hand, as we discussed. But the one thing they do have, and Harris very smartly went to this, is we supported a bipartisan bill earlier this year that would have directly dealt with not all, but many of these issues. And they don't even bring this up a lot, but what they should hammer is it would have reformed the asylum process and limited it to 6 months. Right now, people wait years for their asylum hearings in the United States. This bill would have added more judges and limited asylum claims to 6 months. It would have been a radical transformation. The border union, who does not like Biden or Harris, they supported it. The Border Patrol Union, and Donald Trump killed it. And Trump did not have a great answer for that either, even though I'm sure he knew that was going to come up. And I think the reason is he just doesn't, he's not intellectually curious. He doesn't care about the details. And a lot of times you can get away with that. At rallies, you can get away with that. But when you go through a debate and you don't really give any substantive policy proposals for the most part, other than I'm going to cut taxes and I'm going to impose tariffs at an unspecified level and I'm going to deport a lot of people. Like that to me is just a missed opportunity for somebody like Donald Trump. I went to their website. Like, the Trump people have been hammering Harris for not having policy on their website up until, I guess, yesterday or 2 days ago they put someone. I went to the Trump website the other day just for shits and giggles, and I started reading the policy they have on the website. And it is, it's thin, thin to say the least. It's basically like a couple of bullet points and then a sentence or two with vague assertions like end inflation, make America affordable again. Okay.
I'm for that.
Large tax cuts for workers. But, if you look at the tax plan, the vast majority of the money goes to wealthier people. To be fair, the wealthier people pay the vast majority of taxes. So if you're going to cut taxes, they're going to get most of the benefit. Carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. But again, not a detail about how you're going to do it. Defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms. So, yeah, I would like a little more policy.
Oh, look at this. A question about the St. Louis Cardinals. Also, somebody said that, I think they said that maybe Trump or Harris was going to increase tickets to St. Louis Cardinals games, which right now people are giving away for literally $0 because the Cardinals are so bad. But let's get back to politics, because I do think this is interesting. Again, you and I are in agreement. I'm sorry. It just is what it is. Harris won. I mean, if you're not partisan, that's true. Look, when Biden crapped the bed, everybody said it. Everybody said it. Donald Trump did not have a good debate tonight. It's not just coming from me. It's not just coming from Eric. Look at the betting odds. I'll show them to you one more time. This was updated literally 1 minute ago. Kamala Harris now 51.5%. Donald Trump 47%. So just so everybody knows, look, that's still a coin flip. But I bring that up because earlier in the day, it was basically flipped. Kamala Harris is up 4.6 points today. Donald Trump is down 4 points. We're talking about an 8.6 percentage point jump in the betting odds. So I think that wraps into a good question because, again, we both think that Harris won, and it's clear from the betting odds that Harris performed better tonight. Let's see here. Both citing? I don't know what that means. Get your questions in with no typos. But here's my question.
Yeah, get your questions in. Well, any questions?
Yeah, we got a bunch. Get your questions and comments. Not just like Trump sucks and Harris sucks. Let's get an actual question. Eric, you and I, man, by the way, we have 676 people watching live, Eric, right now.
Wow.
676. And there's already been over 4,000 people that have watched this in the last 40 minutes. So thank you so much, you guys. If you're watching, Please
Yes.
subscribe to the channel. We're doing a ton of content. We've had a good month. We've had a good couple weeks. We're going to keep on rolling. We both said this debate tonight was much more important to Kamala Harris. She had much more to lose. Donald Trump is more of a known commodity, even though Kamala Harris is the vice president, right? She didn't have a good run for president back in 2019, 2020. Okay. She didn't even make it to Iowa and all that. She had a couple bad debate moments. Everybody brings up the Tulsi Gabbard thing. She was kind of anointed VP. And then basically, there's no primary. Biden drops out. Within 48 hours, nobody challenged Kamala Harris. And let's be real, she was not a very visible vice president. I bring this all up because people always say, oh, isn't everybody's mind already made? And I'm saying, to me, it's not. Because look, you had a bunch of people like an RFK. You had a bunch of people who are maybe not motivated to vote. You got a bunch of moderates in the middle, some people who are conservatives, but they don't like Donald Trump, but they couldn't stomach Joe Biden because he looked like he was dead. And they're like, oh my God, I don't like these things that Donald Trump did, but I can't vote for Joe Biden. Here comes Kamala Harris. She wasn't doing interviews, right? She did one interview. I guess she did another couple, but she did one big interview. It was okay. But like there was a lot on the line for Kamala Harris tonight if she would have shit the bed. And early on, first answer, I thought she might shit the bed. So I thought it was much more important for her because another thing is Donald Trump has had the momentum for the last couple weeks. If you go back to the RFK announcement, whatever, it was right after the convention, but like Donald Trump has been leading the betting odds for the last couple weeks. And Kamala Harris with a strong performance tonight with an obvious win. And if you want to say whatever, was it 55-45? Was it 60-40? I mean, it wasn't a mercy rule, but it was a clear
No,
victory.
this wasn't the Biden Trump debate.
Right. But it was, again, if you want to say
But it was
60-40,
right.
55-45, I think we both agree that ABC was pretty fair, but slightly biased towards Kamala Harris. I think that's also fair. But what I'm trying to say is a long-winded way of basically saying that Kamala Harris had a lot to lose tonight, and she stepped up and she took back control of this election.
She did. She did. So, first of all, the momentum point. The betting odds were slipping for her because the polling was slipping for her.
Yes.
There was no convention bounce. And in fact, Trump was gaining ground over the last few weeks. Not a lot, but enough in the polling averages. Some of that, I think, may have had to do with RFK Jr. RFK Jr. dropping out the day after Harris ends her convention eliminated probably any convention bounce that she got because we know the RFK Jr. voters said they like Trump more than Harris. Now, we don't know exactly how many went each way or will go each way, but it would stand to reason that that was a net gain for Trump. That was a net gain for Trump, RFK Jr. getting out of the race and endorsing it. But here's the point you were making earlier. This is why this was so critical for Harris. The New York Times Siena poll, which is kind of one of the gold standards of polling, like that poll, the New York Times Siena College is rated as one of the highest, most accurate pollsters, and it had a huge sample, 1,695 people. It had Trump up by 48-47. It was a big deal when it came out a few days ago. It actually moved the betting odds because I checked in the morning and then the poll came out, and Trump bumped up like a point because of this poll. In the poll, they asked people, are your views of the candidate largely fixed, or do you want to know more? Only 9% said they need to know more about Donald Trump. 9. Because, of course, as I said, he's either been president or been running for president for 9 years. We know everything there is to know about him. With Kamala Harris, that number was 28%. Almost 1 in 3 voters in this gold standard poll from the New York Times Siena College said they need to know more about Kamala Harris. That's why this was so vital for her. And if you broke it down even further in that poll, among people who were undecided, the people who are going to decide this election, almost half said that they needed more information about Kamala Harris. That's a massive number, way bigger than Trump's number. That is why this was so important for her. A, to stop the momentum in the polling that was slowly going in Trump's direction, and B, to introduce herself in a positive way to this fairly large number of people who say they need more information about her. I think that there's no question you would have to say she came off very well tonight to those people. Now, The caveats, of course, are who knows what's going to happen. The election, there's a long way to go. The news cycle moves incredibly fast. So I expect this will give her a bump. I expect she will be, and she already is, reestablished as the betting favorite. I think she'll get a bump in the polls. I think she'll probably be the favorite in most of the election forecasting models. But how long that will last, probably until the next big news event happens. And we've seen a lot of them in the last few months.
Gucci says Kamala lost badly. She has no plans to improve the lives of Americans. Now, your second part, Gucci, I think it's fair to question her policies and the Biden policies, and will they actually improve America? 100%. But we're talking about the election and who can win. And look, it's clear tonight that Kamala Harris won the debate. We have 909 people watching live. 6,600 people, Eric, have been watching or at one time or
Damn.
another. So, I mean, I was going to say like we should stop, but the people want more, Eric. Like
Hey, you know what?
I have nothing left to say, but I'm sure you do.
Oh, I've got a few more things. Let me check the notebook. Okay. One of the, look, I want to be fair here. One of the moments I think Harris could have handled better, and I think this was a missed opportunity for Trump, is on the flip-flopping issue, because that is a legitimate point of
Yes.
vulnerability for her. Because when she ran for president in 2019 and then she dropped out right before Iowa in 2020 in the Democratic primary, she was very liberal. I mean, they brought up some of these positions in the debate tonight. She was against fracking. She wanted to abolish ICE. She flirted with defunding the police. She talked about confiscating AR-15s. So there was some
Hold
pretty
on.
extreme policy positions.
And by the way, I don't mean to interrupt, but the one, and I don't know if you saw this clip going viral on CNN, the one that's insane. By the way, like fracking, okay, nobody bases their vote on fracking, and apparently she changed.
Some people in Pennsylvania might. But
Okay, apparently she changed her position 5 years ago. Whatever. Like some of these things are normal politics. Eric, apparently, and I looked this up. Apparently, she was for the gender affirming care of the prisoners and the undocumented immigrants, which is insane. Like, it's even
yes.
insane to even discuss that. But like, I don't know if you saw that clip from CNN where even the CNN host was like, "Really?"
No, I didn't
And
see the clip, but yes,
that's pretty insane.
it is pretty insane. But anyway, so in politics, there's always what's the real answer and what's the best answer you can give. The real answer for Kamala Harris, like if you gave her like truth serum, is I was running in a Democratic primary at a time
Yeah.
when the party was going way left. And I had advisors and consultants telling me, hey, you need to stake out land to the left of Joe Biden, and you need to fight Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren for that territory. That's the real answer. The answer she should give, which is also true, I'm sure, is hey, that was a different time in America. I've been the vice president for 3.5 years. I've seen up close policies and the effect of policies. And for instance, on fracking, I believe we can get to a carbon neutral future while allowing for fracking in the meantime as we build up renewable technologies. I've had time to think about it. Like there's good answers you can give. I just think she missed an opportunity to talk about growth because there's nothing wrong with changing your mind or evolving your position. Hell, Donald Trump has done it on numerous things, right? I mean, you have a man who appointed the justices that overturned Roe v. Wade, talking now like he's, some pro-choice guy. Like people evolve and they change their positions all the time. Sometimes it's for politically expedient reasons. Sometimes it's a change of heart. Sometimes it's a combination of both. There's no crime in that, right? In fact, as someone who likes moderate policies, I think it's a good thing. I am glad that Kamala Harris has changed her positions on those things. One of the few things I like about Donald Trump is on a few issues, he has moved the Republican Party more toward the center. Not on everything, but on some issues. And that's one of the only things I like about Donald Trump. So I like that she's done that. Explain it, defend it. I think she missed an opportunity, but Trump kind of let her off the hook. And I think that has something to do with the muted mics. If you noticed,
Yeah.
there were times they wanted to have more, but Donald Trump, when she was talking, mostly was acting respectful. as he did with Joe Biden and kind of letting her talk. I think if you would have not had muted mics, Trump would have had the opportunity to say, "Hey, wait a minute. What why did you change your mind?
Yes.
You had XYZ position 4 or 5 years ago and now you have this other position. He could have and he didn't do that. Now again, some of the muted mics may have had something to do with that, but he could have done it when it was his time. It's not like the moderators make you answer the questions. You can say whatever the hell you want when it's your time. So he could have gone back to it and he really didn't. And I think that, and you know why he didn't do it, Charlie? And I go back to that moment of the crowd size. He was mad. He was like on tilt a little bit. That got him going and his demeanor changed and he became kind of angry and abrasive. And I think it got him off track a little bit. And at the time, I'm thinking, why is she talking about his crowd size? What are people leaving during his speeches? Like, why is she bringing this up? And when she only has a limited time to answer, but man, it was clearly part of a strategy. And I think it definitely worked.
Okay. Just because I think it might be a fun argument. So you tell me, because you're from Pennsylvania, but you live in California. And because I'm making these trips to California for the Food Allergy Institute, I've never seen more oil wells in my life than in California, which you would never think. Like, you have this idea that California is a bunch of hippies. I go to Long Beach, there's freaking oil wells in the grocery store parking lots. I go to the beach, you can't
Literally.
even see the beach. The beach is tankers. I bring this up. Somebody was chirping me, which is fine. I really don't care. We're delusional. We're one-sided. Sure. Okay. Trump won the debate then, folks. I guess he won. I
Right.
guess the betting odds swung 8 points and we're stupid. Okay, we're done. But my point is, like, you're from Pennsylvania. I get it. And big picture, energy is a big deal. And gas prices and oil and all that. But like, I have never in my life, I'm 42 years old, I've never heard one person tell me, I'm going to change my vote because of fracking. I've just never heard anyone say that in my entire life.
Yeah, look, I want to be full transparency. I have not lived in Pennsylvania since 2008, but I grew up there and spent the first basically 30 years of my life there almost.
You turned your back
And
on your hometown.
I did. I abandoned my hometown. Fracking. So here's what happened with fracking. Fracking used to be kind of a niche thing. Like most oil came from what you're talking about, oil wells in the ground or in the ocean, right? But what happened was they discovered that it got kind of harder and harder to get that oil, and they needed this fracking technology. And the price of oil, obviously, as we know, has started to go up. So it became cost effective. So and I'm no expert in this field, but from what I understand, a huge portion of oil now, particularly in Pennsylvania and other states, is from fracking. That did not used to be the case. So that is why fracking is so important, is because it is not just a niche thing anymore. It is how you get a lot of the oil. And by the way, a lot of landowners are getting rich off of fracking because the companies are leasing their land and they're like, hey, sign this lease. You don't have to do anything. We're going to frack underneath your land and you're going to get money. And so that's why it has become so important, because it's helping a lot of landowners who have signed these contracts. It's become a huge part of the oil industry. The revenues for these companies are off the charts, and a lot of people are employed there, particularly, as I said, in my home state of Pennsylvania. And as you and I have discussed, we really haven't talked too much about the polling in the states, but it remains the case that Pennsylvania is if it's close, most likely the state that will decide it, or at least one of the two or three that will decide it.
Okay, just because we're having fun here. So Sharon Berry says the moderators gave him 9 extra minutes. Get real. So this is again something. Look, folks. Okay, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I watched. I made 2 pages of notes. I did notice. It seemed like, because again, we're going to wake up tomorrow morning and the whole narrative, if you watch any right wing news, it's going to be ABC News with super bias. I promise you. I haven't even looked yet because we've been doing this, but that's going to be the whole narrative. It did seem like, now maybe it's because Trump was talking too long and he only got a minute and he was going too long, but it did seem like many times they kind of had to
Yes.
interrupt him at the end and say, wrap it up. And maybe that's because he was going on too long. I don't know. It didn't seem like he was way longer than Harris, but I did, just as I'm watching, again, I'm trying to be fair here. It did seem like the moderators tried to kind of cut him off before he finished his sentences, but then again, maybe he was going way too long. I don't know. Somebody
Yeah.
look it up and see how many people who talked the most.
So I'm a little surprised by Sharon's statistic there. But you know what? I had a sense he talked more.
Okay.
Nine, because here's the thing. What was the debate? 90 minutes total?
No, it was
Nine, or was
no,
it a
it
little
went
more than
longer than
90
that.
minutes?
Well,
So
there was 2 commercial breaks. I bet you it went 100
100
minutes-ish.
minutes. So a 9-minute gap in a 100-minute debate where there's two people is a pretty big gap. Like if Trump did get 9 extra minutes to talk, that's a big advantage when you only have two people and you only have 100 minutes. And that's the sense I got, that he was talking more. And also, here's something else to counteract kind of the fact check, which definitely did hurt Trump, if you want to call it that, more than Harris. There were several instances where the moderators wanted to move on and Trump basically wouldn't let them, and they gave in to him. And that happened at least 2 or 3 times. And then I remember specifically one time Harris wanted to say something and they wouldn't let her. They were like, no, we got to go. We're moving on. And so I think that if we're going to point out the fact checking, which is fair, we should point that out too, that I got the sense Trump talked long. Sharon is saying it was 9 minutes. I would buy that. And also, they let Trump go. And I'll tell you, there was one point, Charlie, where this was after I think Trump was on tilt because of the insinuation Harris made, where she said people are leaving your rallies. There was one time they did the split screen, and Trump was just going on and on and on and rambling about the something. I don't remember what it was, and getting angry. And Harris was just kind of looking at him, and she kind of had a
This.
wry smile.
She
She
went like
kind of
this.
had, yeah, she had like it was a little, it wasn't a full on smile, but it was like yep, I got you exactly where I want you. Just keep going. And so I think she was okay to let him talk a little bit more.
That is a good point. So, again, as I'm watching this, and look, I shouldn't, but I'm watching this like a sporting event. You're right. I'm just trying to see who's winning, who's losing, who had a good round, like we're watching boxing. And look, so much of this is about TV and the presentation. And I made this remark to my wife. At first, I didn't like. So, look at, if anybody's watching us right now, we have these tight boxes for you and I. And for a while there, it was really tight. You couldn't see anything past a head and shoulder shot. Like, I want to see some body language. I liked when they went to the 2 shot and you could see people, if you're looking, you can see them using their hands and all that. But I do think that Kamala Harris did a really good job of her reaction shots. And look, this is not how our media should be. It's not how our politics should be. But it's true, unfortunately. A big thing is like the memes and the GIFs that are going to come out of this. And I don't even know what the big ones are going to be, because look, the Biden debate was such a nightmare for him. I mean, he had so many just terrible moments, but like there's going to be a lot of
You,
memes
you know what
and
it's going to
GIFs.
be? My prediction: they're
The
eating the
dogs.
dogs.
Eat,
They're
yes.
eating the dogs.
Eating the dogs is going to be there for sure. But you're going to see a lot of this, of Kamala going like this. Like she had some good reaction shots where she kind of was able, if you're watching on TV, even if Donald Trump was talking, you could tell that she was getting her verbal jabs in with facial expressions when she wasn't allowed to talk. I did notice that.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see a comment about while I can only see them kind of as they pop up and then they disappear, but I did see a few back. Somebody made a comment about Trump and his economic policies, and saying essentially that Harris doesn't have economic policies that will help everyday Americans. And I just want to mention this because Harris brought this up, and I think she could have hit this more. Do you remember when she brought up the Goldman Sachs plan comparison?
Yes.
So Goldman Sachs, huge financial company, not a partisan outfit, right? They're in the business to make money. They did a detailed analysis, okay? And she could have explained this, I think, even better, but I actually saved this because I thought it was interesting. So they did a detailed analysis of the proposals Trump has made, again, to the extent that he's made them, because there's some, vagueness in them, and Harris's policies, right? And they compared the following. How would they affect inflation, economic growth, and the budget deficit? And again, this is Goldman Sachs. This isn't me. This isn't the Harris campaign. This isn't a bunch of liberals, right? I don't think the people at Goldman Sachs are probably are Marxists, right? I don't think they're going to like the local communist chapter meeting. I'm pretty sure they love capitalism probably more than anyone. So
And
here's what they
All Democrats are Marxists, by the way, just so you
right,
know.
right. Here's what they said about what I'll in simple terms, economic growth. Under Trump's plan, it would be lower than the baseline, lower than if we did nothing. Under Harris's plan, higher. Inflation, Trump's policies would cause higher inflation than the current baseline. Under Harris's, lower. And finally, the budget deficit. And this one's obvious because he wants to extend those tax cuts for 2017 that are going to expire at the end of next year, and they will blow a hole in the deficit. They predict if Trump gets his way, the budget deficits would balloon. Harris's budget deficits would be smaller than the current baseline based on her economic policies. So I just think for people who say, to the extent policy matters in this campaign, and look, I'm a nerd for this kind of stuff. I like policy. I didn't hear a lot of policy tonight from either candidate, heard almost none from Trump. But to the extent policy is discussed, I think it's interesting and fair to say, okay, people say a lot of things, politicians say a lot of things. What do independent financial people say about the effect these policies would have? And there it is. And it makes sense. Look, if you want a massive tax cut that would mainly benefit the wealthy and businesses, which is what Trump's would do, there are upsides to that. The upside is you would have probably some more economic growth, but the downside is a massive loss of revenue. If you want to deport 10 or 15 million people, that's going to cause economic issues. I mean, what do you know the percentage of people that are in the immigrant community that work in the hospitality sector and the food sector? What is it going to do to those industries if all of a sudden they lose 10 or 15 or 20% of their workforce? I mean, how's that going to play out? So I think, what about tariffs? Trump always says, "Oh, the tariff isn't a tax." Well, not directly, but these companies, what are they going to do when when the price of their products go up? They're going to pass that cost on to the consumers. Of course they are. That's how it works. Now, there are arguments for tariffs, but you can't say they won't increase prices. They will. That's the history of tariffs. So I just think it's, if you're going to make these claims, like, let's have somebody look at it who, actually knows these kinds of things and run the numbers and give an opinion.
Okay, we have so many comments. Every time I go to click on one,
Oh yeah,
it
let's do the
it goes
comments.
up. Well, here's what I want to say. Okay, let's see.
Oh,
Here
here's Dustin.
here's
I just saw Dustin. He said, "How about we do our own resource, depend on independent sources?" Look, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. If you think Goldman Sachs is in the tank for Kamala Harris and the Democrats, I mean, I don't know what to tell. That's another thing too. It's kind of like when I used to argue with the RFK people, junior people. It's like they don't care. They didn't like fact checks.
do it
I don't
again,
know.
by the way, and then we'll
So
make another video. Do it again.
yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, I don't know what to tell you. So what do we do then? We can't believe anything. We only believe what Donald Trump tells us. And we can't look anything up. Like Trump says, we can't believe the FBI crime statistics. We can't believe the numbers on inflation. We can't believe any economic forecasts. Like, so I'm honestly curious. Like, what can we believe? What numbers can we trust?
Okay, here's what I want to bring up, and I would love if we could actually get somebody on here because I just want to hear. And so when I ask this question, somebody in the comments, give me your honest opinion. Make the case to me and Eric how Trump won this debate. I just don't see in any way, shape, or form how anyone can say that Trump won the debate. Again, I think the moderators were slightly biased towards Kamala Harris. I agree with you. But in what world in reality? And if you guys have never seen us before, that's fine. But we both obviously we didn't want Biden, right? We both said immediately Biden clearly shit the bed at the debate, right? When Kamala Harris doesn't do interviews, we call her out. When Kamala Harris had an okay interview on CNN, which I think we called a single. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. We just say it. Like, I want somebody in the comments, if you're a Trumper, which is fine, but like, explain to me how Trump won tonight. Like, explain to me, make the case how Donald Trump. I just like Eric, part of me pushing back for the last hour is like, I just like to kind of make it, interesting. Like, there's just no way you can actually credibly make the case that Donald Trump won this debate. You just can't. And again, like, I'll be the first one to tell you, like, Eric and I, we talk about the betting odds every week. And we talk about this for 7, 8 months. We quote the betting odds every single week. And the betting odds shifted. As of now, they shifted almost 8.5 points, 8.5 percentage points towards Kamala Harris just tonight. That shows you who won the debate. Like, it's clear. That doesn't mean that Kamala Harris is going to win the election. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump has no chance. By the way, even if these numbers are right, that's 52-47. That's still an absolute coin flip. But it's ridiculous to try to act like Donald Trump won this debate tonight. He just didn't. There's just no way you
No,
can say he won the debate.
no. Getting back to what I said it. Wow, we've been on for like an hour now. Thank you everybody for being with us tonight. But about an hour ago when we first started, I didn't do a great job of my boxing analogy. What I tried to say is this was not like a first round knockout.
Right.
This was not the Trump Biden debate. That was a knockout, and mainly not even a knockout. That was just kind of like Biden fell down in the ring.
No, it was a
Like
murder. It's if the boxer dies. Like the
right.
last time a boxer died in the ring, literally, I'm talking died. That's what that was.
But died without even hardly being hit, like just kind of dropped dead. But
Correct.
this fight, if it were a boxing match, I think the way that the argument here is, was this a unanimous decision that went the full 12 rounds, but on the judges' scorecard, Harris clearly won, or was this like a TKO where she just knocked him down? What is it, 3 times, and by like the 9th round they stopped the fight? That is kind of the argument to me of how far the Harris win stretches. It was a clear win, a convincing win, a win, I think, to the, again, so many people are locked in. We have to be clear about this. Even Biden on that debate in June was only lost like 3 points in the polls after that debate. I mean, that was as bad as it could be, and he
And
lost 3 or 4 points. So there is a limit to what you can gain or lose in this, era.
and according to Alan Lichtman, Biden might still have won. He may still have won, just so you know.
Brendan Schaefer saying it, or my pet's okay. Brendan, as long as you do not live near the Haitian population in Youngstown, Ohio, your pet should be fine. But according to Donald Trump, if you do live there, you better lock your pets up because they might be murdered and eaten.
Okay, you mentioned, I was going to do baseball. You mentioned boxing. So if we're doing boxing, I think it's not a split decision. I think Harris won, and if you want to go rounds, if it's a 12-round bout, I think she won 7 or 8 rounds, right?
Right.
If it was a baseball game, she won the baseball
But
game
Charlie, did she win on the
4
judges?
4-2.
Or did she win on the judges' scorecard, or did she get like a TKO? Did she
Were the
knock him
judges
down enough?
Russian? Were they Russian
Yeah.
judges like in the Olympics back in the day? I don't know. Like, again, look, man, Eric, I try to be fair. I try to play devil's advocate. I mean, there's just no way you can be a sane person and pretend that Donald Trump won the debate. Now, again, by the way, this is all strategy in politics. If I'm on the right, I would do exactly what probably right-wing partisan talking heads and pundits are doing. I haven't looked, but I guarantee you it's all about ABC. And it was 3-on-1, and it was all the moderators going against Trump. That's how I would play it too if you lose a debate. I get it. It's not true, but that's how I would play it.
Let me give you a taste. My buddy sent me these. My buddy Brian sent me these. Ben Shapiro. This was fairly early in the debate. The moderators are the story of the evening, and it isn't a good story.
Okay.
Matt
Yeah.
Walsh, another right winger on X. Ironically, the moderators are winning this debate for Trump by being so insanely lopsided and biased against him. They are now the story of the night, which is a win for Trump. So that gives you just a little flavor of what people were saying on X. By the way, Sharon earlier had pointed out that she saw that Trump talked more than Harris. CNN is saying their count, Trump spoke for approximately 42 minutes, 52 seconds. Harris spoke for approximately 37 minutes, 36 seconds. So they added a difference of a little more than 5 minutes that Trump spoke more than Harris.
So maybe that explains why, just from me watching, it seemed like the moderators were having to kind of cut off Trump at the end because maybe he was going too long. I think that, yeah. So if Trump talked 5 more minutes, look, I don't want to say I care. Like, you can't 100% get it so that each person talks 50 minutes, right? Like, that's never going to happen. I think if it's 52-47, that's pretty fair to me. Like, I don't think either side can really complain about that. Like, okay, if one side talks for, 60 minutes and the other side talks for 35, that's a different story. But from who got to speak, I feel like it was pretty fair. I also feel like early on, it seemed like, is it David Muir? Is it
David
Muir?
Muir.
Muir. It seemed like he was letting them early on, like, he probably wanted to move on, but he was letting them have back and forth. Like, there was even a couple topics where I feel like there was 3 exchanges. Like, they let them keep talking, which is, look, I think the best debates, you almost don't even need moderators after the questions, which is why I think the fact checking thing is fair. You fact checked me about the flip flopping. They did go after Kamala Harris on that, so she handled it well. I think, and I'm repeating myself now, but we have a lot of people watching. Like, Eric, I don't even know if we should go all night. We have almost 2,000 people watching. I'm in
Dude.
St. Louis, Missouri. It's 11 o'clock. You're in California. It's only 9. Just so everybody knows. Okay, so you can feel sorry for me. I woke up at 4 a.m. because my son
Oh.
basically pissed the bed, right?
Oh.
He's crying. So I go up there. I got to change the sheets. I got to change the jammies. And then I'm like, all right, I'm already up. So I started working because I'm like, I might as well just get a bunch of work done. So, hey, I don't have a lot of sleep, but I don't think we can stop, Eric, when we have 1,900
Look at
people
you,
watching.
working
I'm a
since
hero.
4 a.m.
I'm a hero.
Meanwhile, I got up at noon and just no, I did. Mark says, by the way, Trump just won the election. So
How?
Mark
Just
is
tell me how.
weighing
By the
in
way,
that
no, Eric, by the way, Trump might still win the election. I don't
yes,
think just because
absolutely.
Kamala Harris, right? Just because Kamala Harris won this debate, I'm not saying it's over. This is a freaking coin flip. And there's still what, 55, 56 days till the election. Let's see. Let's try to get some more
Can I
questions.
just
Yeah,
say
go ahead.
something too that really kind of stood out to me, even though it shouldn't. I talked earlier, and for those just joining us or haven't been on for very long, I talked earlier a lot about how Trump is such a unique candidate, and I don't mean that mostly in a good way, that it's hard to debate him, and
Yeah.
it's also hard for the moderators and people asking him questions. And I think that there was no starker example of that than when he talked about the election being stolen, because you could imagine a scenario where Trump in his mind thinks he really won the election, but realizes that he's in a campaign and he's got to try to win. And so if it comes up in a debate, he could say something like, there were some irregularities that I felt strongly about, but that was then. Let's move on, and I want to talk about this election, right? But the fact that he refuses to do that, and not only does he refuse to do that, I was just amazed at how in this perhaps the biggest moment of this election, who knows? There's a lot that could happen, but this may go down as the turning point. This may go down as one of the deciding factors of the election. And the fact that during that opportunity, with tens of millions of people watching, he decided to go on and on and on about something that is just so blatantly false, that the election was stolen. I think anyone who isn't in the tank on the MAGA side had to look at that and think, this man is delusional. Like, he is living in an alternate reality, because clearly he believes it. Like, it's one thing to say, well, he's just saying that and he doesn't really believe it, which is what David Muir's question was. David Muir was like, well, you said you really lost, but if you listen to him, unless he's a great actor, it sounds like he really still to this day believes it. And the fact that he is that, I mean, I'm just going to say it, delusional, that he would go on and on talking about how Ashley Babbitt, the woman who was killed that day, was unjustly killed. I mean, if you watch the video, they warned her, don't go through the door. Don't go through the door. She breaks through the door. Many other people would have followed her. They were right outside the House lobby, lawmakers in the House. God only knows. What if that mob had run into Nancy Pelosi or Mike Pence or AOC? What would have happened? Or would they have just been like, hey, how you doing? High five when they were chanting hang Mike Pence outside? It's just, and he takes no responsibility for it, tries to deflect blame on Nancy Pelosi and everybody else. I shouldn't be surprised, but it was one of the defining moments of the debate for me, was how he was just unable or unwilling to pivot away from that and go on and on and on. And Harris is just kind of looking at him like, again, with that wry smile, like, are you really doing this? And again, when you are trying to convince people who aren't already with you, and your pitch to them is a 2-minute answer about how you really lost the election and all the court cases against you were biased and how January 6th wasn't really that big of a deal and you didn't have responsibility for it. It was on other people. I just it was stunning to me. It really was. It was really stunning to me that he went there and didn't try to just pivot away from it, that he just doubled down.
Okay, and maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe I'm wrong. But that, and I've said this 1,000 times, and people always rip on me in the comments when I say, for the most part, I thought Trump was a pretty good president until COVID hit. Did he handle it perfectly? No, but no one handled it well. And so when I say I think Trump was an okay, pretty good, fine, whatever word, fine president, people always go after me. And then I say, look, here's the deal. He lost me 100% with trying to overturn the election and January 6th. Like, I'm done 100%. And I've said that. I haven't changed my mind for three and a half years, however long it's been. Here's what Trump should say. Okay. You can make the argument that it wasn't fair. Okay. Democrats weaponized COVID, even though COVID was a real thing and people were dying, but Democrats wanted COVID to last as long as possible because everybody's depressed. They're going to vote out the incumbent president, but also they used COVID to allow unbelievable rule changes state by state for mail-in balloting. And it was by far the easiest election to ever vote in. Now, I don't think it was fraudulent. Like, if you now I'm switching my narrative here to a tangent, but like, if you really think illegal immigrants who for the most part are coming here to work, yes, some of them are bad hombres, but if you think if they're going to risk their job and making money by voting, like, come on now. But what I'm saying is, you can make the legitimate argument to someone like me, people in the middle, people who are reasonable, even if they don't agree with you, that, yeah, Democrats changed the rules in 2020 to make it super easy to vote. And maybe that's the reason Joe Biden won. Like, that's a fair argument to make. But when people are storming the Capitol, when you have fake electors in 7 states, by the way, JD Vance just said that he would have done the same with the fake electors. He said he'd have let Americans have the debate, which is insane. When you call Georgia and say, find me 11,000 votes, when you call up the canvassers in Wayne County, Michigan, and you say, don't certify, that's where you lose me. That's where you lose. And I honestly think that's a big reason Republicans didn't have the red wave in 2022 was not just Roe v. Wade, but also the fact that Trump was still on the ballot, basically, and everybody was kind of pissed about January 6th and subverting the election. And I think that's where Trump lost a lot of people in the middle that will never come back, in my opinion. Nothing that Trump says, he could have a great debate, he could have great policy, he could change. Nothing is going to change the mind of a lot of people who think Trump 100% overturned the election January 6th and they're out and they're never coming back.
But if he was going to do it, it wouldn't be with what he did tonight. It would be something like, hey, I want to move on. I feel like there were some irregularities. I didn't like some of the changes, as you said, with COVID, but let's move on. Let's focus on 2024. But he didn't do that. He went the opposite way. By the way, CNN poll through SRS of Debate Watchers, one of these Insta polls. Take these with a little bit of a grain of salt. You know, these are small sample sizes usually, but
I'm listening. I'm getting water. I'm listening.
63-37, Harris won. 63-37. Now, you may say that doesn't sound like too big of a gap. But remember, like we talked about earlier, with our partisan climate, it's so hard to get a big majority. And just to prove that, the poll for the first debate, Biden-Trump, okay, which we know should be who won the Biden-Trump debate, Charlie, what should the percentage be?
1,000 to negative 1,000.
That's right. That's right. It should be 100 to 0, right? If you're being any objective, even if you're not objective, it was clear as day.
That Biden won.
Poll, right, the Biden won. Trump won the poll 67-33. So 33% of people told a pollster that Joe Biden won the debate. So that just shows you the range. Like, it's impossible to get more than 70% of people to say you won a debate. And Kamala Harris got 63% to say that she won. By the way, another sign that she won. Sign one is the right-wingers, to the extent we've seen them so far, saying it was the moderator's fault. Sign number two, the Harris campaign is calling for a second debate. Because that was one of the stories tonight. Will there be another debate? The Harris campaign's like, yeah, we want another one. That's a sign they think it went. Although I don't know if that's smart strategy or not, because do you want if you get a bump, do you want to give them another chance?
By the way, look, I want 2 more debates. I don't want any of these candidates hiding. That's why I've given Trump credit for doing all the podcasts and interviews, and I wish Kamala Harris would do more interviews. I'm actually surprised by that because if I'm them, it's not good, by the way. It's not good for America. It's not good for our political discourse. But if I'm the Harris campaign, I don't want any more debates. I want the last one to be this one where I smoke Donald Trump. But I'm glad, and I hope there actually are more debates. But Eric, so you brought up 67-33. It just goes to show you the partisanship in this country that either side, if you just have a D or an R next to your name, you're going to wake up in the morning with 35% or 33% in this case. And if I'm not mistaken, if we go back to the boxing analogy, 67-33 would be like Harris won 8 rounds and Trump won 4 rounds. And I think that's pretty fair. Whatever you want to say. If you want to say it's 7 rounds to 5, but to me, it was a clear victory. It's not a tie. It wasn't a home run. It wasn't like she knocked out Donald Trump and he can't win the election, but it was a clear victory for Kamala Harris. And by the way, we have 2,342 people watching live. Eric, 25,000 views in the
Wow.
last hour.
People love
25,000.
people were in this debate. The audience is going to be huge for this debate when the numbers come out. And by the way, Jamie's saying, "Who cares who a freaking Hollywood singer actor endorses?" She's talking about the other big news of the night that Taylor Swift announced she's endorsing Kamala Harris and signed off a childless cat lady in her Instagram post. Well, look, I don't care, Jamie. I want to be clear. I don't
Why
think
not?
most people care.
Why
Well,
don't
I
you
like.
care, Eric?
Look, I want to be clear. I love Taylor Swift probably more than a 45-year-old man should,
Sing
but
one
I'm
of
a
her
big
songs.
fan. Oh
Sing
my
one of her
god.
songs right now.
It's a love story, baby, just say.
Okay, you can stop. You can stop.
Yeah, okay. That's all I got. I'm a big Swiftie. But that said, I don't care. But you know who does care? Young people. People who may not vote that much. People who are kind of casual, right? Now, is it a lot? No. But if this race is really close, everything matters. Everything matters on the margins. And it looks like, if the polling's accurate, it's going to be close. And it's going to come down to tens of thousands of votes in a few states.
Eric, all these people are watching. We have picked up so many subscribers just tonight. So everybody watching, I think we've picked up like 200 subscribers. If you're watching
That's
right now and you
amazing.
haven't, yes, and you haven't subscribed, please press subscribe. We love it. Hey, a subscription is free. Look, we're pretty reasonable. If you're a Trumper right now and you think, oh, we're being unfair, I mean, again, tell me how Trump won the debate. He just didn't. But if he wins the next one, we'll say it. We're fair. Go back in our last 7 months of podcasts. We're pretty damn fair. Neither of us wanted Biden. We said we got to get this dude out of there. And look, I keep thinking about this. Nikki Haley, when she said, which probably now, if you ask her, she'll say, oh, she'll change her mind. Remember when she said the first party to drop their 80-year-old wins? I always thought that was true. I thought that was true back then. And I thought that for both candidates, whether it was Trump or Biden. And I just look and I just see like, I still don't think Kamala Harris is this generational talent, although she's doing better than I expected. I think that's fair. But like if Nikki Haley was up there, she's going to do way better. Or if it was Ron DeSantis, right? Like Trump has been around for a long time and he's old and a lot of people want change. And I know people look at Kamala Harris and they think she's not changed because she's part of the incumbent presidential ticket with Joe Biden, but she's not Joe Biden and she's 20 something years younger.
Yep.
And that's
She's
huge.
generational change. That she
Yeah.
has. And I mean that's clear as day. I think, by the way, the statement from the Harris campaign, under the bright lights, the American people got to see the choice they will face this fall at the ballot box between moving forward with Kamala Harris or going backwards with Trump. That's what they saw tonight and what they should see at a second debate in October. Vice President Harris is ready for a second debate. Is Donald Trump? That's from Jen O'Malley Dillon, the head of the Harris campaign. Trump had said he would do a second debate on NBC. So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition or not. Like if I'm Trump right now, It's weird because we don't know what's going to happen. I'm guessing on the effect. I think Harris is going to pick up a couple points and pull into a little bit more of a lead, secure lead, not a big lead. So you're still going to be well within striking distance, I think, if you're Trump. This was not a fatal blow to his campaign by any means. Do you look at how tonight went, evaluate it honestly, and say it didn't go very well? I think we should not risk it again because we're still in striking distance. Or do you say we're probably slightly behind right now? We're probably going to lose if the election's held today. We might need a little jolt. I think we can do better. Let's try again. I think that's a very interesting strategic decision for the Trump campaign. I would lean, if I were in the Trump campaign, I would lean toward not doing another debate. I
Really?
would get out of it. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because I don't think Trump is capable of changing. Again, I get back to my point earlier. It's been 9 years, and the man still has no depth of policy. I just can't believe that he doubled down on his election denialism tonight and January 6th. I just was stunned by that. Like, showing that he hasn't shown any growth in those areas makes me think he's not going to all of a sudden at 78 years old being president or running president for a decade going to change that. I just don't think it's possible. Try to grind it out on the electoral college, which he still may be able to do. As we've talked about before, you and I do a lot of breakdown of polling and of the electoral college. It's pretty clear that Harris is going to have to win by at least 2 points to feel good about the electoral college, and maybe 3 or 4. I mean, remember, Joe Biden won by 4.5 points in 2020, 7 million votes. And if you switch less than 100,000 votes in 3 states, Donald Trump would have won the presidency. So even if Kamala Harris is up by around 2 points now, depending on which polling average you look at, let's say she gets another 2-point bounce from this, which I think is probably fair. So a week from now, 2 weeks from now, she's up 4. Well, that means Donald Trump's only a point or 2 away from the electoral college.
You see that?
From winning the electoral college. Trump, Harris 52-47.
I mean, look, dude, that's 5 percentage points tonight. So that's a swing of dang near 8.5. Was that 8.6 points tonight?
Yep.
So,
By the way,
Go
Joe
ahead, go.
Biden has weighed in. Joe Biden says in a post on X that VP Harris proves she's the best choice to lead our nation forward. We're not going back, saying she won the debate and, quote, it wasn't even close.
It wasn't.
No, he's
It
right.
wasn't. Hey, how about this? Our
What do
guy
you think
LA says,
Biden? Oh,
go ahead. What?
I would say, what do you think Biden was thinking watching that tonight?
He doesn't care, dude. He's on the beach. Like, that is funny. Let's be real. It is pretty funny. It is pretty funny that just Joe Biden's like, screw it now. He's on the beach over there by Dewey Beach, which is a great beach. He goes to Rehoboth. I think it's next door, but he's on the beach all the time. Like, he is the president, but he kind of isn't, because look, it's smart to act like Kamala's the president for these last several months, so she appears presidential. It is kind of funny, but then also like this narrative that, oh, if Joe Biden can't run again, then he should quit. Like, just think about this, folks. That would never happen. Like, if you have a CEO of a company and he has a contract, let's say he has a contract and he has 1 year left and they offer him a 4-year extension and he goes, I think I'm just going to be done after the year. Like, that's what this is, right? Like, Joe Biden can run the country, or whoever helps him out or the people around him can run the country for the next 5 months or so, but he's chilling. And again, it makes sense for the Democrats to act like Kamala Harris is the president right now because it helps her electorally to be out there and to look presidential. LA says about Trump, he's already done CNN and now ABC. And I think that's fair. Look, Trump, remember, we kind of forget the debate with Biden, even though we bring it up. Like, Trump did that debate with CNN. He did a debate with ABC. I think it would be fair if he got a Fox debate. I do think that would be fair at this point. You think that's fair? What do you think?
Well, full disclosure.
Oh, that's right.
I'm
That's
on,
right.
I appear occasionally on Fox News, and my wife works for Fox. I would say that
Isn't that
I
fair,
would
though?
I would like to see more.
Okay.
So I think all the major networks should be in the running for a debate. And that includes NBC, which hasn't had one yet either. That includes CBS, which is going to have the vice presidential debate. I think that does also include Fox. So, yeah, I like more. I would like to see 3 presidential debates, and I would like to see them spread out on a variety of different networks and platforms. I would also like to see joint debates where you have a primary sponsor that's maybe a network, but then you have some new media, have a podcaster, have, like, again, you would. I'm not
Us.
saying you're right. You were right. I'm not saying like Joe Rogan necessarily, although I like Joe Rogan, but I'm saying someone who's maybe perceived to be more kind of in the middle, right? And let different voices out. So yeah, I'm for more generally than less. So yes is the answer to your question.
But I brought it up because, if the narrative around this debate is gonna be it was 3-on-1 because ABC was biased, which I think they were slightly, but not to the degree that the people on the right are saying, and that's gonna be the whole story tomorrow. But if he's done CNN and ABC, I do think it's fair if he got a debate where it was a little more of a home game. I think that's fair. I also think that would help the Harris campaign if she did well in a debate like that, right? Like, hey, everything is not stacked in your favor. Like, hey, go to enemy territory. I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
this is your governor. No matter what you think about Gavin Newsom, and that dude's slick, but he went into that debate against Ron DeSantis in enemy territory with Sean Hannity as the moderator, and he held his own. And here's a dude who, like, he came after Ron DeSantis and was like, "You're the lockdown governor." And I was like, wow, this dude will say anything. But from a political standpoint, like, people respect that. People
Yeah.
respect to go into a hostile atmosphere, even if you hold your own. It's okay.
I'm kind of thinking I agree with you. But I'm thinking from a strategic standpoint, there's always a question of what would I prefer, like as, just a guy sitting here who does this thing with you and is really interested in this stuff. What do I think is like best for democracy, right? But then there's a question of what would I do if I were the campaign? And those are often different answers. So like if I was the Harris campaign, would I do it? No. I think I'd rest on my laurels on this one and maybe do one more on a network that I could mutually agree on. You know what I'm saying? That's probably what I would do were I the Harris campaign. I think the first debate, people forget Trump did not perform well in that debate.
Right.
It was overshadowed because of the disastrous performance by Joe Biden. But I watched the whole thing, and I remember that was one of my takeaways was if Biden would have been okay, I think we'd have been talking about Trump more in that first debate. And
Mhm.
I think to some extent that was what we saw tonight. Like I want to be clear, I thought Harris was strong second half, actually after the first like 15 20 minutes. I thought she was good and had some nice lines and some good moments. But if I had to pick, if you said to me, because for those just joining, I think Harris clearly won the debate. So if you were to say to me, what was more true, that Harris was really good or Trump was bad? I think what was more true is Trump was bad. Harris was good. I want to be
Yeah.
clear. But to me, the bigger story wasn't Harris being good. It was Trump not performing. And in a way that, again, look at it through the lens of a person who's undecided. Yeah, the MAGA people are already with him. We get it. In fact, someone just said, "Will Trump win?" Hell yes. Like, yeah, Trump has his supporters. But if you were tuning into that debate and you watch this man ramble and rage and bring up things that are in many cases obviously and clearly debunked and talk about how the election was stolen and people eating dogs, and it just was, I don't know. I don't know how you could, as an undecided voter, be like, yeah, that's my guy after tonight. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a person who didn't have a dog in the fight and really didn't feel strongly about either
Wait,
candidate yet, I don't know.
did you not have a dog because it was eaten by a Haitian
Yeah,
migrant? Is that what you're
I
saying?
I did have a dog in the fight, but then the
Until
Haitians got a hold of it, and no, sir.
you know how I like to make fake debates like First Take? I don't know. I actually think that Kamala Harris did pretty well. I'm not saying it was a home run. We said
So
this
so
about the
you think so
speech
you think it was more, if you had to pick one or the other, Harris did well or Trump did badly, you would side more with the Harris did well.
slightly.
Yeah, okay.
Slightly.
Because I would go slightly the other way, but I think
Okay.
both are true.
When you made the analogy of extra base hit after the Democrat convention, I agreed with that. Of her speech, I thought it was a double, probably a double. So I think we love to do the sports analogies, as people can see here. Yeah, I think she was good, but a lot of that to me is because she's unproven on this stage. Like I still feel like when I watch her that she could just be bad, right? Like she could just kind of go away and then you go, "Well, how the hell did they have this woman who probably wouldn't have I still don't think she would have won the primary. If there was an actual primary, I still don't think Kamala Harris would have won. But if you go back to her performance in 2020 and you go back to the fact that she wasn't very visible throughout her 3.5 years of being VP, she's had some opportunities to fall on her face and she hasn't. I thought her speech was good. I thought the CNN interview was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was a single. I think today's performance was better than the CNN interview. I think it was equal to the speech at the convention. Like, yeah, I thought she won tonight more than Trump lost, not by a ton, but I was impressed, especially if you're just watching now. Overcoming her first answer was bad. Her first answer was a word salad. She looked like she wasn't ready for the big stage, and I'm like, oh, is she going to shit the bed? And then 20 minutes in, abortion plus the rally thing, and then she never lost momentum for the next whatever, however many, hour or so.
It's interesting. If Harris wins, I think one of the things we'll look back on is that she was a political talent. Because remember, this was a woman who was thought to be a rising star in the party.
Yeah.
And that is why she was in the position she was in 2019, where people put her among the first tier of candidates in that primary when it first started. And I think what happened was she got in, she just wasn't ready. She wasn't ready for that moment. It was a weird moment in time where the party was moving super left.
Can
Go ahead.
I? So I'm with you. I've heard a lot of people say this, that basically she made a strategy point to try to go left of Bernie
Yes.
to win. And you can make the argument, did she really want to do that? Is that really who she is? Now, by the way, sometimes that's worse, right? If you're saying, I'm going to change my value structure to win, but it seems like she felt like the way to win back then was go super left. Now, obviously, she's on a general election ticket. She doesn't have to run in a primary. You can move right to the center, which is not only smart politically, but maybe that's really where she is. And the 2020 Kamala was her playing to some strategists that said, you got to be left of
Yep.
Bernie to win.
I think so. And she, for whatever reason, she wasn't comfortable, and it showed, and it didn't work. And then she was picked as vice president and had a rough couple of interviews and looked timid and
Yeah.
didn't get back out there. But then, and I remember, if you go back and watch some of our podcasts, I remember saying even before Biden got out, hey, I've seen Harris a few times lately. She's much better. And I really thought that. And then you saw when she got into the race, some of the rallies, you saw it certainly at the convention speech, which I thought was really good. And then you saw it tonight. This is the woman, this is the talent. I'm not saying she's Barack Obama. I want to be clear. I'm not saying she's a generational political talent, but this is the ability that people saw back when she was a rising star. And it's flashes. You've seen other flashes of it. The Brett Kavanaugh hearings, she came off really well. So, but I think this is the arc of Kamala Harris's career. Again, who knows if she goes on to win? There's a lot of time left. Certainly, that could happen. And then the other thing, and my son's starting to act up and doesn't want to go to bed, so I think I have to go soon. But the
No
other point
worries.
I wanted to make is you and I have talked about this. We spent a lot of time on this a few podcasts ago, where we talked about the Republican reckoning that's coming if Trump loses. You said earlier, imagine what Nikki Haley would have done. Imagine Nikki Haley, what she's thinking tonight watching this. And again, that doesn't mean the Republican Party was ever going to nominate Nikki Haley, because I think the party's changed so fundamentally that I don't know if she could get the nomination even if Donald Trump didn't exist. I don't know. The party's changed. But the party's going to have a hell of an internal fight when they reckon with what happened to them. I mean, you and I haven't done a show since the Dick Cheney endorsement. But that's a stunning thing. Like, I know people like, Dick Cheney, he's old. He's obviously, had like a 12% approval rating when he left the vice presidency, and he'll forever be tied to the Iraq war. I get it. But this man was the consummate Republican. Like, the chief of staff to Gerald Ford was a soldier in Reagan's Republican Party in the House in leadership, the vice president of the United States in a very consequential time in American history for the last Republican president prior to Donald Trump. And he's endorsing a Democrat over Donald Trump. I mean, that's a stunning thing. Whatever you feel about Dick Cheney or Donald Trump, that is a stunning thing. George W. Bush, I'm not saying he's not going to announce an endorsement. The fact that he will not endorse the last Republican president. I mean, it's just the party, this man, what he has done to the party. And again, there are a few areas I think it's helped the Republican Party, and I agree with. But in general, I think it's been really, really bad for the Republican Party, what he has done to the party. And that reckoning is going to be bad if he loses. And also, for the people who bent the knee, I get it, man. I get it. It's politics. You want to have a future. But this gets to the outlier status of Trump that we talked about earlier. It's not a normal political thing. Like, a normal political thing would be, I don't really love the candidate at the top of the ticket, but you know what? I got to get on board for my political future. Like, that's typically how it happens, right? But Trump's such a unique figure that I think it really is a choice, like a hard choice that a lot of these people have had to make. And I don't know if he loses. I think a lot of the people who bent the knee, history's not going to remember them kindly, is what I'm trying to say. And it will remember kindly people like Dick Cheney, who put party ahead of, or put country, ahead of party.
For sure. 1,728 people watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. We are going to wrap it up. Eric's got to go here. And look, this is not the first time we brought this up, and you can't change it now. But you talk about the party. The other thing they did, which may be the death blow, is they literally nominated someone where all the polling and all the betting odds said they had a worse chance of winning than Nikki Haley, which is really insane if you think about it. Now, it doesn't make sense to talk about it now because that was a story 5 months ago. It's over. But like, say what you want about Democrats, but in the end, and maybe it's not always the most democratic process. I agree. There's a lot of criticism that needs to be pointed at the Democrats, but they rally around who they think has the best chance of winning. That's what they did in 2020 with Joe Biden. What happened here was a little different. I still wanted to open primary. I think maybe it was actually smarter strategically for everybody to get behind Harris. And clearly, if they win, right? I mean, that was the right move. But we may look back if Donald Trump loses a close election and say, how in the hell did you nominate the candidate that clearly, by all the polling and all the betting odds, had a worse chance of winning than Nikki Haley? That's really stupid. It is.
Yeah, it is. But the answer is, and I guess in a weird way, there's credit here for voters, is they wanted Trump more than they wanted to win. In other words, winning, yes, is important, but it was more about the cult of this man, right? That is what was important. That was the overriding thing, is this is our guy. And so we don't care what the polling says. And also, I don't think they believed it. I don't think they believed the polling. I think they felt
Right.
like Trump was going to be the person who was going to win. And the party of Haley, that was the party of Dick Cheney. That was the party of Ronald Reagan. That's not this Republican Party. And that will be the interesting thing in the months after the election if Trump loses, is will and to what extent does the Republican Party revert back to what it was before? Or is it now permanently the MAGA party, even without Donald Trump? Is it a populist party that's pro-tariff and anti-immigrant and non-interventionist in foreign policy? Did he change it forever?
Well said. You want to end on that note, buddy, so you can go parent?
Oh yeah. Do we have any last questions or comments you want to get in? Thank you everybody for listening and for leaving your comments and subscribing and liking. We really appreciate it. Charlie and I do this at least once a week. We'll probably do it multiple times a week leading into the election.
I'll tell you what, man, I expected a nice bump, but like this has been amazing. Seriously, you guys, thank you. Please subscribe if you haven't. I mean, even right now, we're 100 and what? We're 105 minutes in. We got 1,500 people watching. I think we had 2,500 watching live at one point. We've had like 50,000 people, Eric.
Wow. That's
50,000
crazy.
people or so have watched in the last like 2 hours. So that's
Oh, by the way, I do
fantastic.
have an update here. Donald Trump in the spin room tonight said, quote, I think it was the best debate I've ever personally had. he, he also said that Harris, quote, wants to do another one because she got beaten tonight, but I don't know if we're going to do another one. Why
Okay.
should I do another debate? She immediately said, we want another one. That's, what happens when you're a prize fighter and you lose, you immediately want a new fight. I think I'll have to think about it.
Okay.
But if I won the debate, maybe I shouldn't do it. That was Trump in the spin room tonight.
Let's end on this because we like to go to the betting odds. This is up to the minute.
There you go.
Kamala Harris about 52, Trump 47. So Harris up about 5 percentage points in the betting odds. And it's important to note that she jumped about 8.6% today. So I'm sorry, Trumpers. I'm not saying he can't win the election, but he certainly did not win the debate. It just is what it is. Eric, well done, sir. Go ahead and
You
parent.
too, buddy.
Thank you, everybody. Comment, like, subscribe. Hey, the 1,500 people of you, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, just hit that subscribe. And then we're going to be doing content. We got 50 days, 55 days till election. It's going to be great. Eric, see you, buddy.